The year is 1925. Paris is the absolute center of the world. The economy is booming, champagne is flowing, and the roaring 20s are in full swing. New money was flooding into the city. Industrialists, steel magnates, and scrap tycoons were building unimaginable fortunes in the wake of the First World War. But hovering over all this newfound glamour was a massive, 10,000-ton problem. The Eiffel Tower. Today, it's a beloved icon. But in 1925, it was literally falling apart. The paint was peeling, the iron was aggressively rusting, and it was becoming a dangerous eyesore. You see, it was never meant to be permanent. It was built as a temporary entrance arch for the 1889 World's Fair, with a strict permit to be torn down after 20 years. By 1925, the 20-year permit had long expired. The French government was bleeding money trying to maintain it. The cost of just repainting the 7,000 tons of puddle iron was bankrupting the city's maintenance budget. The Parisian public hated it. Newspapers published daily editorials begging the city to finally demolish the useless metal monstrosity and sell it for scrap. And reading one of those exact newspapers, sipping a coffee in the most expensive hotel in Paris, was a man named Victor Lustig. Lustig was not an industrialist. He was a career con artist. Charming, dangerously intelligent, and fluent in 5 languages, he had spent his life separating wealthy men from their fortunes on transatlantic cruise ships. As his eye scanned the article detailing the government's financial crisis over the tower's repair bills, a brilliant, audacious, and highly illegal idea took shape in his mind. He wasn't going to pull a small street scam. He was going to execute the biggest real estate fraud in human history. He was going to sell the Eiffel Tower. But to pull off a scam of this magnitude, he needed to completely bypass the strict due diligence of the world's top businessmen. He needed flawless documentation. He hired a master counterfeiter to produce highly classified, perfectly replicated French government stationery. It had to withstand the scrutiny of professional auditors. Armed with these perfect fakes, he appointed himself to a very real-sounding, very powerful position, the Deputy Director General of the Ministry of Posts and Telegraphs. With his trap set, Lustig identified the 6 wealthiest, most competitive scrap metal dealers in the city. He typed out 6 highly confidential letters. The letters invited them to a top-secret, closed-door meeting at the Hotel de Crillon to discuss a lucrative government contract that required absolute discretion. The trap was set at the Hotel de Crillon, one of the oldest and most luxurious hotels in Paris. A place where multi-million-franc deals were struck in hushed tones. 6 of the most ruthless scrap metal tycoons in France arrived. These were men who understood heavy industry, mass tonnage, and massive profit margins. Lustig greeted them in a private, wood-paneled suite. He was the picture of a high-level government bureaucrat, perfectly tailored, calm, and authoritative. He dropped the bombshell. He told them the maintenance costs had completely bankrupted the city's engineering budget. The rumors were true, the government was tearing the Eiffel Tower down. He rolled out forged blueprints. He wasn't just selling a landmark, he was selling 7,000 tons of premium puddle iron. To these men, it was the score of a lifetime. But Lustig knew these men were sharp. To bypass their internal audits and standard procurement rules, he needed a flawless excuse for the extreme secrecy. He explained that if the public found out the beloved tower was being demolished, there would be riots in the streets. The entire tender process had to remain entirely off the books. No public records. No standard city council votes. Just a silent, closed-door bidding war between the 6 men in that room. To seal the illusion, Lustig took them in a rented limousine to the tower itself. He flashed a fake, laminated government ID to the guards, who simply waved them through. As they walked the grounds, Lustig wasn't looking at the iron. He was analyzing the men, looking for the weakest link. He found him in a man named André Poisson. Poisson was new to the Parisian elite. He was deeply insecure, desperate to be accepted by the inner circle of French industry. He wanted this deal to make his name. Lustig informed Poisson that his bid was successful. The tower was his. But as the time came to transfer the massive sum of money, a massive hurdle appeared. Poisson's wife. She was far sharper than her husband, and she started doing her own due diligence. The entire transaction felt entirely wrong to her. Why the rush? Why the secrecy? Why were there no official government letterheads beyond the initial invitation? The red flags in the audit trail were piling up. Poisson began to panic. The lack of standard financial controls terrified him. He was ready to pull out of the deal entirely. Sensing his massive payday slipping away, Lustig did something brilliantly counterintuitive. He arranged a private, urgent meeting with Poisson. Lustig confessed that as a civil servant, he barely made enough to afford his tailored suits. He strongly hinted that to guarantee the contract, he needed a little compensation. He was asking for a bribe. It was a psychological masterstroke. Lustig used corruption to legitimize the entire transaction. Poisson was instantly relieved. A corrupt French bureaucrat demanding a kickback? That made perfect sense. It explained the secrecy and the lack of paperwork perfectly. His internal alarm silenced, Poisson eagerly handed over the funds for the 7,000 tons of iron, plus a massive cash bribe entirely off the books. Within an hour of securing the cash, Lustig and his accomplice were on a first-class train carriage headed straight for Vienna, Austria. They checked into an upscale hotel in Vienna and waited for the explosion. They waited for the French press to report the most embarrassing fraud in history. They checked the papers every day. Nothing. A week passed. Still nothing. The police never came. André Poisson had realized he was conned. But he was so profoundly humiliated by his failure of basic due diligence that he couldn't bear the embarrassment. He knew that if he reported the crime, he would become the laughingstock of the Parisian financial world. The perfect crime was covered up by the victim's own ego. But Lustig wasn't done. The silence told him everything he needed to know. The coast was entirely clear. A month later, he packed his bags, took the train right back to Paris, and paid his master forger for a fresh batch of fake government stationery. Victor Lustig was about to set out and sell the Eiffel Tower a second time. And that is why he remains the greatest con artist in history.